Hi guys, I'm Tony Spera, your moderator, and welcome to another edition of Seekers of the Supernatural. Well, it's been a wild 24 hours, I can tell you that much, guys, with the rumor that was released regarding Annabelle escaping her box in the museum. I'm here to try to explain what I think happened and why the rumor started. This is at least what I read anyway. Annabelle Wallis, who was the original actress in Annabelle, the original movie, the first Annabelle movie, was doing an interview, not about Annabelle, but about an upcoming movie that she was in with actor Tom Cruise. And I believe she was talking about, how he does his own stunts and how fantastic he is and is doing his own stunts and how serious he is about his work. And then she also talked about how she got to run with Tom because he likes to, I guess, jog. And she said that he's on a different level and that, he can run on his own better or something to that effect. I don't remember. But apparently the interview is translated into Chinese, and the Chinese translation came out instead of Annabelle, running with Tom. Excuse me. It came out Annabelle escapes. That was the literal translation, I guess, and that caused a lot of panic, I guess, around the country and around the world. I didn't think it'd ever go viral like that, but it did. And so that's how I think it happened. I don't think any particular intent was made to start that rumor. It's amazing how many views I got already. Annabelle's real popular. Everybody's curious about Annabelle. And for those of you who don't know the story, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of why Annabelle is dangerous. Because I learned this from Ed, remember. When I met Ed in 1979, Annabelle was already in the museum. He had placed that doll in the museum in about 1971. And he told me the dangers of the doll right from the start. He went through the whole story. It was given to two nurses in Harvard Hospital back in, I think it was 70, 71. And the mother of one of the nurses gave Donna, one of the nurses, a doll for her birthday. It was the Raggedy Ann doll. No name. It wasn't named Annabelle or anything. The girl liked dolls. Just like, kids like toy trucks and things. And when you grow up, what do you like? Cars, hot rods, things like that, sports cars. Well, girls like dolls too as they get older. She was only about 28 at the time. So she really liked dolls, so the mother gave her a doll. This is what happened, though, with Annabelle and why she's dangerous. We don't know what might have transpired before the mother purchased the doll. We believe the mother purchased the doll in a second-hand store. Items can be cursed. Rituals can be placed onto items. Incantations can be done. Evil can be infused into objects. I think that's what happened. Anyway, she gets the doll. And she used to leave the doll in different areas of the rooms in the apartment she stayed at with her roommate. She'd come home from her shift with her roommate and find the dolls in another location that she had remembered. So she said to the roommate, "You didn't move the doll or anything before we left, right?" No. Nobody had touched the doll, and the doll kept showing up in different locations. She'd leave it on the couch, and she'd come home, it'd be on the bed. So then she started to think, maybe the superintendent of the building's manager, who's kind of a young guy, maybe he's playing a trick on us. Why don't we try to find out? So they taped the entrance door on the bottom with Scotch tape, and they would put certain objects like the rug right in front of the door at the entranceway to see if it would move at all because it was a slippery rug. They said to themselves, we'll know if somebody was here. Well, they did that. They came home. Nothing was disturbed. They walked in the house. The doll had moved. And at one point, there was a note written on parchment paper and with a pencil that said, "Help us." And I believe another one said, "Help me." There was more than one note, I believe. Found under the bed of Donna. Now, they didn't own any parchment paper, so they were confused. Who did it? Well, the doll was moving around. One day, they're at the breakfast nook, Donna and her roommate, and they're having breakfast. Donna brought the doll with her and placed her next to her at the breakfast nook. As they're talking and having their breakfast, those two flimsy Raggedy Ann arms made out of cloth and whatever's inside, they're flimsy though, levitated onto the table of the breakfast nook. Now, I don't know about you, but even with all my years' experience, I think I'd be a little bit scared from what's going on, a little nervous. But rather than be scared, these nurses were more intrigued by it. And the other nurse says to Donna, she says, that doll's trying to tell us something. I know a psychic, and she can probably figure out what's going on and what the message is. So they agreed to have a psychic come in, the friend. And they did. They had a seance that evening. And the psychic says, when she goes into a trance, she says, I'm sensing the spirit of a young girl that was killed outside this apartment complex in a car accident. She's about 7 years old. Oh, her name is Annabelle. That's what she told the nurses. And the nurses bought it hook, line, and sinker, thinking now there's a human spirit inside that doll. Well, that's one thing that I can tell you that's not true, that never happens. A human entity can never possess an inanimate object like that. So, they think they have a human spirit in the doll. Now, they really try to act like it's a human spirit in there, and they're talking to her and paying a lot of attention to her. They even bought her a little bracelet to put on her wrist. And they did. But the kicker was, one evening, Lou, who was the fiancé of Donna, he was sleeping on the couch, and the doll was on the other end of the couch just sitting there. And Lou fell asleep on the couch. But then he wakes up with a start, and he's really, really like breathing heavy. He's frightened. He's holding his neck when he wakes up like this. And Donna sees this, and she says, what's the matter, Lou? What happened? What's the matter? He says, I just had the worst nightmare in the world. She said, what? He said, I just had a dream that doll there was crawling up my leg and getting up to my neck and then tried to strangle me to death. And he was sweaty. And here's what he did. He picked up the doll off the couch, because it's a natural reaction to get mad, I guess. And he threw the doll across the room, and he said, that's just a Raggedy Ann doll that can't hurt anybody. But when he did that, that's when these psychic wounds appeared on his chest and on his stomach. There's 4 psychic slashes on his chest and 3 on his stomach. He had a white t-shirt on. And you can see the claw-like blood marks appear, 7 of them, on his chest and stomach. Immediately, Donna and the roommate, who was home too, they got scared. And they said to themselves, that's no spirit of a young girl inside that doll. Something's wrong. Something's really wrong. And that's when they called Ed and Lorraine. Well, first they called Father Richard Nolan, Episcopal priest in Hartford. And he said, I don't know what to tell you. I never deal with stuff like that. He said, but I know who does. Why don't you call Mr. Warren? He's right here in Connecticut. And that's what they did. They called Ed. So Ed and Lorraine did go out to the house, interviewed the girls, determined that there's something evil infused within that doll. And Ed said, I'll take the doll off your hands, because they didn't want it. And that's when Ed took the doll and drove it back to the museum and placed it in the museum. And Ed did have a problem with his car, just like in the movie. Not like in the movie where that we got thrown across the road or anything, but his car was jerking around, stalling on him, and the car ran fine previously to that. But that's not the end of why Annabelle is dangerous. What happened was, a detective had come to the house one day to talk to Lorraine. She was working on a murder case of a young child and helping the detectives. She was doing psychic work for them. And the detective was at the house, and as Ed described the detective, he said the guy was about 6'3", 240, big guy, husky. And after he talked to Lorraine, he looks over at Ed and he said, hey Ed, can I see that doll that I heard put slashes on people? And Ed says, yeah, come on down, Father. I'm not Father, it wasn't a priest. Priest is later. Come on down, detective. And the detective walks down the stairs, goes through the passageway leading to the museum, goes inside. Now remember, the doll at this time wasn't locked in a case. Ed didn't make a case for it at that point. It was sitting in a chair in a corner of the museum with a little yellow tape in front of it saying, do not touch. Well, as Ed's speaking to the detective, showing him around and talking about Annabelle, the phone rings on the wall. It was a rotary dial phone. Most of you guys never saw one. A rotary dial phone. You might have seen them in the 1940s movies, 50s. Ed picks it up and he talks. And he says, okay, hold on. He looks at the detective and he says, I have to take this. It's a private call. I'm going to go upstairs. Don't touch anything, please. I'll be right back. So Ed goes and takes the call upstairs. It wasn't 3 or 4 minutes later that Ed hears a rustling sound coming from the staircase. Ed says, what the heck's that noise? He walks over to the staircase. It's the detective. He's wavering off the walls as he's walking. He looks like he's incoherent. And Ed said he was white as a ghost. He thought he was having a heart attack, the man. So he says to the man, look, I'll call an ambulance. I'll call an ambulance for you. The detective looks at Ed and says, no, Ed, it's not that. It's not that. So Ed says, what's the matter? He says, I don't want to talk about it. That's what the detective said. I don't want to talk about it. But when he got to the top of the stairs and sat down, he looks over at Lorraine, the detective, and he says, but I'll tell her. Hold on 1 second. Phone's ringing. Hold on. So the detective says, I'll tell her, but I don't want her to tell anyone what I say. And Ed says, don't worry, it's okay. Go talk to Lorraine. So later on, Ed went downstairs to see what was going on. And everything was all turned over. The chair was turned over. Annabelle was on the floor. Candelabras were overturned. Like a big struggle ensued. So I even asked Ed, I said, hey, Ed, what did that guy say to Lorraine? And he said, she never did tell me. But she didn't have to tell me because I know what he did. He touched the doll. And something terrible happened to that man that he didn't want to talk about. At least not with him. We found out later that this police officer retired a couple months later and moved out to California and never heard from him again. Then a Catholic priest who knew Lorraine very well came to the house to show Ed and Lorraine his brand new vehicle, Father Bill. And he called up and said, Lorraine, I'd like to show you my new car. Can I come over? She said, why don't you come over tomorrow morning and have some lunch in the afternoon. It was lunch. So he comes over, and he knows Ed, of course, too. They're all at the table. They had lunch. Everything was fine, talking about different things. And then he looks at Ed, and almost like the detective, he says, hey, Ed, can I see that doll downstairs that I heard so much about? So Ed says, yeah, come on down, Father. Now, the doll still wasn't in a case. Same place where it was. Ed brings him downstairs, cautions the priest not to touch anything, including Annabelle, of course. But Ed tells the story about Annabelle, just like I told you the story with Lou and the slash marks. When Ed got to the slash marks, part of the story, the priest, almost just like Lou, what he did, he reaches over the yellow tape and he grabs the doll, picks it up, throws it across the museum. It lands on the floor, and here's what the priest said. God is more powerful than any devil or demon. And Ed says, Father, I just got through telling you not to touch anything. That was wrong. You shouldn't have touched the doll. The priest goes, I don't care. God is more powerful than any devil or demon. That's it. And Ed says, yeah, you're right, Father. You are right. God is more powerful than any devil or demon. But no man is. No priest. You really shouldn't have touched it. Priest poo-pooed it like he was perfectly safe. Goes back upstairs, talks to Lorraine, says his goodbyes. They look at the car one more time. That priest never made it back that night to the rectory where he lived. He got into a car accident with his brand new car on Interstate I-84. On his way back to the rectory, he went almost head-on into a tractor trailer when he went out of control. And here's what the priest relayed. He didn't die, but he was injured. The car totaled, brand new, totaled. Here's what he told Ed when he called up about a week later, sobbing to Ed, saying, "Ed, I should have listened to you, Ed." "Well, what's the matter, Father? What's wrong? Why are you crying?" He said, "The last thing I can recall was looking in the rearview mirror of the car on the highway and seeing the image of the doll. That's when I lost control and had the accident." You know what? We had a lecture back in 1982 at Canton High School, Canton, Connecticut. And I was in the front row with Judy, and with Father Bill was there too, because he was friends with Ed and Lorraine. I remember Ed showing the slide of Annabelle on his projector. When he put that slide up on the screen, I looked over at the priest, and I'm not kidding. Here's what the priest did the entire time Ed was talking about Annabelle and showing Annabelle on the screen. Here's the priest. He wouldn't look up. He wouldn't look at the doll, and he wouldn't make any eye contact with the screen at all. After Ed finished and went on to another slide, that's when the priest looked up again. But that's not the end. That's terrible, right? But that's not the end. Another thing happened, which was very bad. Ed used to give tours of the museum to college kids, to anybody, if they had a group of 10 or more. And Ed used to charge $5 or something back then per person. Ed was a talker. Ed loved to talk about the paranormal and give knowledge, of course, but he loved to talk about it. And he was talking about all the objects in the museum to this small group of people. One of the persons that came was a young man on a motorcycle with his girlfriend. He was about 20. And Ed gets to the doll. Now, the doll is in a case now at this time. Is now encompassed in a wooden and glass case. And as Ed's talking about, again, it's almost like a trigger, talking about these slash marks on Lou, what happened to Lou, the young man races forward towards the glass of the cabinet, bangs on the glass, starts yelling, "This is a bunch of BS. This is a bunch of bull. If that doll can put slashes on anybody, do it to me right now." He just challenged the doll. He challenged what the evil that surrounded that doll was. He challenged the demonic. Ed says, "Hey, you and your girlfriend, get out of here. I can't have that. I just got through telling everybody that you can't touch anything and you shouldn't challenge anything." The kid was smirking, looking at the other people, saying, "You guys believe this bull?" Laughs, walks out with his girlfriend. That man never made it to his destination either. But unfortunately, he was killed. He went head-on into a tree with that motorcycle. We know what happened because the girl didn't die. She was in a hospital for, almost a year. She said the last thing she could recall was they were laughing and joking about the doll when he lost control of that bike and went straight on into a tree and was killed instantly. Why would you challenge something you know nothing about? Why would you challenge the demonic? Why would you challenge evil? People say to me all the time, why don't you just get rid of the doll, throw it away? You're just throwing away the vessel. You're not getting rid of the evil that's there. Now it's free to wander where it wants. That doll is trapped, basically, because of the prayers that are said around it. It's not really the glass case, even though the glass case is a layer of protection because you're not physically touching it with your hands, getting your aura mixed with the aura of the inanimate object, the evil within that object, the evil aura. It helps, but it's the prayers that we have, the binding ritual prayers that are said by a Catholic priest that keeps the evil at bay. It's almost like an electric dog fence where the dog can only go so far and then he stops and it can't go any farther. So we believe that the doll still has activity. In fact, we know it does. And the doll is not owned by anybody else but me. No one else owns it. People say, this guy said he bought it. This guy bought it. No, I've had offers for the doll for $2 million. Now, how many of you out there could use $2 million? I could. But then I thought to myself, I can't do it. And I remember Ed saying that you can't allow evil to roam like that. If you can captivate it and capture it and keep it at bay, why would you allow it into society? I won't sell a doll. I won't give the doll away. I won't sell it for any price. Sometimes this thing's more important than money, and that's safety of other people. People may think it's a joke. They may be listening to this or at other stories and things about Annabelle and think it's all a big hoax, big joke. It's not. It's not. That's why I keep security, and I have to pay for security for the museum and for the doll. I have separate security on the doll and on the case. I mean the museum and the doll. So I have two separate security systems going. And there are times when there's higher activity, like now, that I move the entire case and put it in a safe location. I have Dan Rivera help me. We move the entire case into a secure location away from the museum. And high activity times like now, when people could be all over the place trying to find the doll. And it's no joke. It's not a joke. So I want you guys to know that no one else owns the doll but me and my wife. Judy and I own the property of Ed and Lorraine Warren. It was willed to Judy and me. And we own the museum that's on the property and all the contents in the museum. It was willed to us. No one else. That was a stipulation that Ed had and Lorraine had, that we will keep those objects safe. What happens after we pass? Still to be decided, because we're still thinking of different avenues to take. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the viewership. I noticed that my viewership went up, and I mean my subscribers went up since this thing happened. And it's one of those things that happened by accident, I guess, with Annabelle Wallace very innocently making a statement and then getting mistranslated about Annabelle. In future videos, I'll talk about a lot of other things, a lot of other subjects, what it means to be an investigator, what it means to be involved in the paranormal, why is the paranormal something that we should explore, things like that. Our whole society is faith-based. We don't do anything without prayer. We don't do anything without God's guidance. We ask for God's guidance when we do things. As for a TV show, if one comes along and something that sounds right and it's not hokey, something that imparts knowledge to people, I'll consider doing it. I'll consider doing it. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to tell you that I appreciate you. I appreciate all the comments, and I appreciate the viewers from all over the world. All over the world. And I especially have a fond thought for the UK. Of course, I love America. I love everything about America. Well, about what it's supposed to stand for, not for what's going on today, but what America was founded on. But I also love the UK because I've been there a lot of times. I've spent over 2 months there, and with Ed and Lorraine and Judy. I know how beautiful the countryside is. Scotland, Ireland, England, Wales. I don't know if Ireland's considered a part of the UK. I don't know, is it? I know it's England, Scotland, and Wales, but I've been to all of them. And they're all beautiful, and the people are all beautiful people. They're very polite, They're not like a lot of American people. A lot of American people aren't very polite. Now, yes, I know there's some people from the UK that aren't very polite either, but their overall demeanor, they were very nice to us. That's all I can say is every time we talk to someone in the UK via in-person talking to, they were always very pleasant to us. And on my comments, very pleasant. So I just love everything about the UK. I'm not English or Scottish or Irish or Welsh. I am Italian. It's about Italian as you can get. My mom is was 100% Italian. My dad 100%. Their parents couldn't speak English, and but I still love the UK. Of course, I love my heritage too. But I'm American. I'm American above all else, and so are most of you watching this. And we have to start treating ourselves better. What I mean by that is each other better. Sometimes I wish I could grab people from other countries and bring them here and show you. Like, grab some people from the UK. Grab some people from South Korea. Grab some people from other Asian countries that show respect at all times. How do I know that? Well, in Taekwondo, which is Korean, I see the respect that's instilled in these folks. The respect for others, for everything. I see how respectful Master Chris's son is to me and to everyone there, and he's 11 years old. He's got my same birthday, but he's like 57, 58 years younger than me. I think he might be 12 now. Great kid. And I see how they are, their honesty and their integrity and their genuineness. They treat everybody with respect and with courtesy. Let's start doing that. Let's start treating others with respect and courtesy. You know, you can learn a lot from every encounter with every human being. I learned a lot from Taekwondo. From respect, to be respectful of other folks, and to work hard, and to never give up. That's part of the tenets of Taekwondo, you know. Never give up. Always strive to be the best. And discipline, and courtesy, and determination. All those things. And I look at Master Chris's son, and I see what a great kid he is, how respectful he is to everybody. I told you, like, the first time I took the class. The first time I was there, I wasn't in bad shape. I mean, I did my cardiac rehab for 3 months after I had my stents put in. So I was on the rowing machine, on the bicycle, and on the treadmill, and I thought I was doing pretty well. I got down to about 207 pounds from 243. Then I took Taekwondo after the cardiac rehab to figure to keep the exercise going. And Master Chris's son, Ethan, he was in the class. He's already a black belt. I was a no belt. They don't give you a belt when you start. And the first thing we did in my trial class was run around the gym, the dojang. Hold on, phone's ringing again. Excuse me. Okay, I'm continuing on. And I'm running around the dojang with about 10 other people. I was in last place, of course. And no, I was in second to last place. Ethan was behind me because he was respectful of his elders. He ran behind me. But then as I was slowing down so much, I mean almost walking, he passed me. And because, you know, Master Chris was saying, keep going. And he passed me. And I looked over at my wife, because my wife accompanied me on the first visit, and I said, he passed me out. And I was embarrassed because I couldn't keep up. You know what Ethan did? He slowed down and let me go by him, and he stayed behind me the rest of the time. See, that's respect. That's respect for your elders. That's respect for other people. He didn't want to make me look bad. And he was about 8 or 9 at that time. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, respect goes a long way. Courtesy goes a long way. And that has to do with paranormal too. You know, there are times when I want to just lash out. There are times when I want to get mad, when I want to start screaming. Now remember, I'm Italian, right? I could have a temper that would just blow the roof off. That's how my father was. He had a temper that frightened anybody. Even though he was a good man, he had a hair-trigger temper from the war. And I started to get that kind of attitude myself of being hair-trigger and wanting to get revenge if somebody said or did something to me. No, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to send prayers their way and send good thoughts. Because some people have got a lot of learning to do. They're on a different level. They have to attain a new level to get to where perhaps we are today, where you are, where I am. I know there's a 99% good people out there. It's a 1% of people that make everything miserable for the others. That includes cops, includes doctors, includes customer service people, airline stewardesses, whoever they are, grocery people. They're all nice people, except you get this one person who really turns you off, who really says something or is rude. Now you think they're all that way. They're not. Most people are good people. And I think most people believe in God. I sure hope so. I know I want to be with my loved ones who have passed away. Ed and Lorraine, my brother Ted, my father, my mom, my cousins, my good friends that have passed. I want to see him again. My Dr. Gene Grasso, who was a great friend of Ed, and his wife Betty. Great, great people. Tony Giangrasso, the funniest guy you want to meet, is a medical doctor. So look, do good, you'll never regret it. Learn things, you'll never regret it. You want to be a paranormal researcher, read a lot, do right by others. You'll sleep a lot better too, If I have a downfall, which I think I have a few, but one of my downfalls is I want to eat too much. I want to get fat. I want to eat a lot of food. I love food. But everybody has a thing where they have to straighten it out a little bit. So for you guys out there who want to learn a paranormal, stay with the channel. I'll keep imparting what I know. I don't know everything. Far from it. But what I do know, I learned from Ed, and I learned from years of experience on my own. And from Lorraine. Lorraine taught me a lot as well. She taught me really how to love people, how to be how to listen to people. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know I was long-winded again. I want you to know Annabelle is safe and sound in a location that's secure. So, till next time, I'm Tony Spera. Good night.